Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu semuanya.
Selamat pagi.
Pagi, Pak.
Selamat pagi, Pak Ibu.
Selamat pagi semuanya.
Pagi.
Baik. Mohon izin Bapak Ibu, acara akan segera kita mulai. Mohon izin untuk mengaktifkan kameranya. Baik, terima kasih. Nah, kita bantu dikit. Baik, pagi-pagi sarapan nasi uduk. Jangan lupa sambal dan tempenya. Mari merapat dan siapkan tempat duduk. Jangan lupa aktifkan kameranya. Baik Bapak Ibu, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mohon izin acara akan kita segera mulai. Selamat pagi, selamat datang Sobat Diklat semuanya. Kita berjumpa lagi pada acara OGD yang pada kali ini adalah OGD yang 173 dan merupakan OGD kedua di tahun ini. Dan saya Imbu Yono mohon izin untuk menghantarkan Anda ke acara inti. Semoga Bapak Ibu semua selalu dalam keadaan sehat walafiat sehingga dapat mengikuti OGD ini dengan lancar dan semangat tentunya. Dan di tengah-tengah kita telah hadir Ibu Kepala Pusdiklat BMKG, Ibu Dr. Nelly Floridariama MSI. Terima kasih Ibu atas kehadirannya. Dan juga Bapak Ibu dari IELTS, ada di sana Bapak Douglas Welkin. Welcome, Mr. Douglas. Bapak Happy ya, Bapak Happy betul. Bapak Andre mungkin sudah hadir.
Siap, Pak.
Ya.
Pak Iwono, selamat pagi.
Baik. Selamat pagi, Ibu Hari. Oke, thank you. Selamat pagi. Thank you for your time and facilitate us ya regarding the topic in this morning. Dan tentunya welcome for all participant. Baik, untuk mempersingkat waktu selanjutnya akan mohon izin akan disampaikan sambutan OGD ke-173 oleh Kepala Pusdiklat BMKG. Untuk itu kami mohon kesediaannya kepada Ibu Dr. Nelly Floridariama MSI. Kepada Ibu Dr. Nelly Floridariama MSI kami persilakan. Silakan Ibu.
Terima kasih Pak Imbu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu semua. Good morning for all of you. Pagi ini kita akan menyelenggarakan OGD kita yang ke-173, Open Group Discussion ini. Temanya hari ini sangat unik gitu ya, dan belum pernah kita laksanakan. Dan temanya adalah Using IELTS to Advance Your Future Study. Karena bagi BMKG mungkin untuk Bapak Ibu yang dari IALF, how to pronounce the IELTS gitu ya, dan IELTS karena kita tahu bahwa ketika kita ingin saat ini BMKG mempunyai program Human Capital Development Program gitu ya, ingin mengirimkan sebanyak mungkin pegawai muda BMKG untuk memperoleh PhD degree di luar negeri. Sebenarnya hambatan utama bukan dari sisi pengetahuan teknis, tapi lebih ke sisi bahasa. Makanya kami sangat memerlukan pendampingan. Dan saat hari ini kita ingin mendapatkan pencerahan dari Bapak Ibu bagaimana ya supaya dari sisi bahasa ini itu tidak menjadi penghalang, tidak menjadi barrier lah bagi kita ketika kita ingin mewujudkan cita-cita untuk mempunyai 500 PhD staff in 2030 gitu, 2030 gitu kan. Dan itu harus disiapkan dari sekarang. Dan kami menemukan bahwa ketika kita melakukan mungkin ya dari pengalaman yang sudah di ini ya, yang kita alami bersama dengan IELTS itu tidak lebih dari 50%, bahkan 40% gitu ya, hanya untuk bisa memenuhi placement testnya IELTS untuk bisa mengikuti persiapan IELTS. Karena kan target untuk luar negeri itu di atas 6, minimal 6,5 sampai 7, 7,5 gitu ya. Itu nggak banyak. Sehingga memang itu menjadi tantangan tersendiri bagi kami di BMKG. Untuk itu kita sangat berharap melalui acara ini paling tidak teman-teman juga bisa yang lain yang kita akan rekrut gitu ya untuk memperoleh pendidikan di luar negeri itu, untuk bisa melihat juga, untuk bisa mempersiapkan diri juga harusnya kita ada di mana gitu dalam persiapan. Mungkin itu yang bisa saya sampaikan karena kita ingin lebih banyak menggali dari narasumber pagi ini. And thank you very much for our resource person, ada Pak Douglas, Bu Denis mungkin ya, kemudian yang terus juga dari Alf, dari Pak Happy, kemudian Bu Hari, mungkin ada yang lain. Mungkin yang bisa saya sampaikan, semoga acara ini bisa berlangsung dengan baik dan bermanfaat bagi kita semua. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Terima kasih kepada Ibu Dr. Nelly Floydariama atas kesediaannya memberikan sambutan pada OGD kali ini, OGD 173. Dan Bapak Ibu sekalian, tibalah kita langsung saja ya, kita masuki acara inti dengan narasumber dari IELTS ya. Dan untuk sesi inti ini akan dipandu oleh Bapak Happy Dwiwardana dari IELTS. Bapak Happy bisa dengar suara saya?
Dengar, Bapak. Terima kasih.
Baik, kepada Bapak Happy kami persilakan. Oke, time is yours, Mr. Happy.
Baik, terima kasih. Selamat pagi, Bapak Ibu semuanya. Terima kasih telah bekerja sama dengan IALF untuk menyelenggarakan acara ini. Sebelum saya melanjutkan ke Bapak Douglas, mungkin ada CEO kami di IALF di sini dengan Ibu Denis. Mungkin Ibu Denis bisa memberikan satu atau dua patah kata. Could you please have one or two words, Bu, for this kind?
Sure, thanks, Happy. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this seminar, using IELTS as a way to advance your future study. So this is your first test. Can you understand me? And you need to adjust your thinking now to thinking in English, not Indonesian. So that's the first test of the morning. Thank you so much to the training department of BMKG for making this event possible. And thanks to Dr. Nelly for her advice, and warm welcome to us all. We have a great team for you today. Douglas Lerquin, I think he knows more about IELTS than almost anyone else I know. He's been an IELTS examiner and IELTS examiner trainer for a long time. And I think you'll find a lot of interest when he starts talking. And welcome also to Andre More, an old friend of the ILF and an LPDP awardee who studied in Bristol in the UK. So I'm sure you will have some questions for him. Just to say that the great thing about preparing for the IELTS test is that you are preparing for the real life experience of studying at postgraduate level in English. It doesn't test your knowledge of obscure aspects of English grammar. It tests your ability to operate in English in an academic setting. So you aren't going to be wasting your time when you're preparing for IELTS. You are investing in the future and preparing for academic study in English overseas or in Indonesian. So once again, selamat pagi, selamat belajar hari ini, and semoga sukses selalu. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Denis, for the speech. Sebelum kita melanjutkan ke sesi yang pertama tentang pemaparan IELTS oleh Bapak Douglas Lerquin, ada baiknya saya akan membacakan sedikit kurikulum vitae dari beliau. Douglas Lerquin lahir di Wisconsin, Amerika Serikat. Kemudian beliau masuk ke mendapatkan Bachelor of Arts in History, Social Studies, and Business Administration di St. Norbert College, De Pere, Wisconsin, USA. Lalu mendapatkan juga gelar Master of Science in Curriculum and Instructions dari University of Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, USA. Bapak Douglas juga telah berpengalaman dalam mengajar bahasa Inggris selama kurang lebih 30 tahun di berbagai negara termasuk di China, Jepang, dan juga Indonesia. Dan sejak tahun 1999 hingga sekarang, beliau menjadi IELTS Facilitator dan Native Speaker Instructor di IALF Jakarta. Baik, tanpa perlu berlama-lama lagi, untuk waktunya saya akan berikan ke Mr. Douglas. Doug, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here for this event today. So everybody has the background already. So what I'll do today is try to give a good introduction to IELTS, give you some tips and strategies so that you know what to expect, and give you a chance to try a bit of the listening and the reading test. And then at the end, we should have some time for a couple of questions if anybody has any specific questions, okay? Before I start, I'm going to try to send a couple of files, 2 of them that we'll use today, and then 2 as follow-up. So if you cannot get them later, I'll ask Happy to send them because he does have these. So let me send these files first, and then I will start the presentation, okay? So again, if you're not able to get those, Happy if you could forward these to everyone. And before I start, I have to admit, I don't normally do this by Zoom. So I'm probably the worst person in the world at using Zoom. So you'll have to excuse me if I have any technical difficulties. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so as I said earlier, normally I do this in person in a small group or 100 or 200 people. I don't normally do this online. So I'm not sure about the timing. So I'm going to start and I'll just keep going through this. So everybody knows I'm Douglas Workman, and I'm here today to talk about IELTS. And I represent the ILF, which is Indonesia's longest running IELTS test center. We've been in Indonesia since 1989, and we've been running the test as long as there's been an IELTS test. So today what we'll do is I'll give you some information about IELTS, and then specifically I'll get into the IELTS task 1 and 2 writing. And then I'll show you what to expect in the speaking section, as well as the listening and the reading. And then, like I said, at the end, we should have some time to answer a couple of questions. So everybody probably knows what IELTS is. It's the International English Language Testing System. Normally, we just say IELTS. It's a lot easier. And it's designed to test your English. So if you're planning to use English in work, or in your case, to study overseas, you'll need IELTS. And it's the most popular test for those 2 purposes, study and work. Now, this is to show you from 1995, we've been conducting the IELTS test, and this shows the number of tests that have been taken. It's only until 2017 on this particular bar chart, because I'm going to use this when we talk about task 1 writing. But you can see for the first few years, not many people took the test. Then starting in 2010, the number has just been going up dramatically, and it continues to go up until this day, and it's changed a lot over the years. And of course, now we have a computer test as well, and that's very popular, and most of you will probably do the computer test. So everything I talk about today, it's relevant to the paper test, and it's relevant to the computer test. Basically, the test is the same. It's a paper test, and then what they've done is they've put it on the computer. So it's not a very high-tech computer test, but it's an excellent test. And this is why IELTS is the most popular test, really. IELTS is owned by 3 organizations: Cambridge Assessment English, everybody knows Cambridge University, British Council, and then IDP, IELTS Australia. And these 3 organizations conduct the test, and they have test locations all over the world, and the ILF is one of those, and we've been here the longest. There are others in Indonesia, but I recommend you take the test at the ILF, and as I've got on the screen, we do the test all over Indonesia. Before we get into IELTS, I do want to mention there are several versions. There's IELTS, and this is what we're talking about today. There's another one called IELTS for UKVI. Now, this is exactly the same test, but it's only used for specific IELTS, UK visa, and immigration purposes. If the university you're applying to tells you you need this test, then take it. But normally don't take this test because it's very expensive. IELTS is expensive, but if you take the IELTS for UKVI, it's even more expensive. But today's presentation is about both of those. The test is exactly the same. There's another one called the IELTS Life Skills. You may have heard of this for UK immigration. This is a totally different test, so we're not talking about IELTS Life Skills. And of course, IELTS is accepted by universities all over the world. I remember when I was in university, there was TOEFL. Everybody took TOEFL for the US. That's not the case anymore. IELTS is accepted by universities all over the world. And as someone who has a lot of experience in IELTS, I think it's the best test. I've looked at other tests, but I think IELTS is the most straightforward test, and you can prepare, and it's very accurate. It'll show you your level of English. IELTS tests for English language skills, listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And one of the excellent things about IELTS is there's a speaking test, and it's face-to-face. You'll be in a small room with one examiner, 11 to 14 minutes, and you shouldn't feel threatened because they just want to ask you some questions and hear what you can say, and then they'll give you a score based on what you say. This is also done by Zoom, and nowadays that's growing in popularity as people are taking the computer test. Many of them take the video test as well, done on Zoom. IELTS is not a test of British English or Australian English or American. All of them are acceptable. It's not a test of grammar. It's a lot more than grammar. It's not a test to see if you can work or study. It's just a test to see how high or how low your English is. And it's not a pass or fail test, because if you do the test, you'll get a certificate. You'll know exactly what you need to improve on if you need a higher score. Now, you don't have to have computer skills or typing skills. You can do the paper test, and that's entirely by hand. Or you can choose to do the computer test. If you've got very good computer skills, you're very good at typing, I recommend take the computer test, but it's a choice. You can register for whichever you prefer. As I said, there's two purposes. There's academic, and then there's general training, which is for work or for migration. There's two different IELTS tests, really. But you're planning to go to a university, so you'll do the academic test. The difference for these two, listening is the same, speaking is the same. The reading is different. The reading for the general training is much easier. The writing is different. The writing for this one, the general training, includes a letter that you have to write. Now, we won't talk about general training because all of you will need to do the academic module. And the test, if you do the paper test, it starts at 9 a.m., similar to our start time for this session. And normally the listening would be first, 30 minutes, 40 questions. Then the reading test, which is 1 hour, 40 questions. Then the writing, 1 hour, 2 questions. And then the speaking would be after you've had a chance to rest. And the speaking is 11 to 14 minutes. So I'll go through all 4 of these today in pretty good detail, I think, so that you'll know exactly what to expect. And I realize many of you have taken the test already, and many of you may have come to study at the IALF already. So you might already be familiar. So for you, this will be sort of an overview, a refresher session. And IELTS is based on a 9-band scale. If you don't speak any English, that would be a 0, maybe a 1. As we heard earlier, you're going to need a 6 or a 7 or a 6.5, because these are whole numbers, but there are also half-band awards. If you're totally fluent and an expert, I suppose I would be, that would be the top band, which is a 9. And again, we're going to focus everything today on a 6, a 6.5, and a 7. Because if you're planning to go to university, that's what you'll need. So what you'll get is you'll get a listening score, you'll get a reading score, a writing score, and a speaking score. So you'll know your level on each of those skills. And then they'll add those together, divide by 4, and then you'll get the overall band. And again, we're hoping you can do a 6 or a 6.5 or a 7 or higher, because that's what you'll need to do if you're planning to do a master's degree or a PhD. As I said earlier, listening and reading, there are 40 questions, and they'll give you a score based on how many you get correct. If you can only get 15 correct out of 40, that's a band 5. If you can get 23 or 24, that's a 6. For a band 7, you need a 30 or a 31. Which is pretty good, you know, because that means you can still get 10 wrong and get a band 7. 10 wrong out of 40. So it's not difficult to get a 6 or a 7 or an 8. And then the writing and the speaking, these I'll go through later on. They're also in the file that I sent, and they're also available at IELTS.org. which is an excellent site. It has a lot of information about IELTS and a lot of things you can download free to practice. After you do the test, you'll get a certificate like this called a test report form. And this is usually good for 2 years. So if you have one from 5 years ago, sorry, universities will not accept it. You'll have to get another one. So you'll have to do a test. It's generally good for 2 years because they want to know if your English went up or down? They want to know your level of English now. So today we'll go through the writing, then we'll look at the speaking, and then the listening and the reading. I'm starting with the writing because that is the score that Indonesians usually score the lowest in. So I'm not going to say that it's the most difficult, but it is the section that gives people the most trouble. And a lot of it is they don't prepare for it. So going through this session today should be very helpful for you. And then after this, you'll be able to prepare, you'll be able to practice, hopefully take a course, get some feedback in the writing that you do. So as I said, there are 2 questions called tasks because they're things that they ask you to do. They're not really just questions, they're tasks. So we have task 1 and task 2. Task 1, you have to write a summary. You might get a table or a graph, a chart, a process, a map, an object. You could get a combination of these, 2 of them or 3 of them. But basically, you're writing a summary. And I'll go through my suggestions to get a good score, but you have to have an overview overall, and then you have to point out the main features and support the main features with numbers or percentages that are on the paper, on the test paper, and then compare if you can. And it's very important you write at least 150 words. So it's recommended you spend no more than 20 minutes. I know this will be hard, but you don't want to spend any more than 20 minutes because task 1 is not so important. Task 2 is much more important. So I'll go through some tips right now so that you can write a task 2 in 20 minutes. Don't spend longer than 20 minutes if you're trying to get a high score. If you want a 5 or a 4, no problem. You can spend a lot of time on task 1. So I will give you 3 of my rules for task 1 writing. First, write an introduction. What, where, and when. This will be on the test paper, so you'll just paraphrase it and then write an overview. So this is something that says overall, it's like a 1-sentence summary. And you have to have that or you'll get a low score. And then you'll pick out a few key features and then support those key features with data, if there is any data on the test paper. So do these 3 things, and then after you finish writing, read what you wrote, proofread it, check, make sure there's no spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes. So remember this bar chart earlier? It shows the number of IELTS tests taken all around the world from 1995 to 2017. So imagine you're sitting down for your IELTS test and this is your task 1. Summarize this in 20 minutes. Hopefully you can do it. I'll work through this and show you what I recommend. Using my 3 rules, write an introduction. The bar chart shows the number of IELTS tests taken throughout the world from 1995 to 2017. So that's just to introduce the reader so that they know what you're talking about. And then we want an overall summary. The number of tests taken grew dramatically from around 0 in 1995 up to 3.1 million. But the period of 2010 to 2017 had the highest numbers. So this is just an overall so that the examiner can read this and say, yeah, you have the overall idea. If you're trying to get a 6 or a higher, you must have one sentence like this. You don't need the numbers here, but you need everything else. It has to be an overall summary. And then you can pick out some important features. Pick out some key features, anything that you think the examiner would want to know. So I write here about the first few years, not many tests were taken. And then I give examples. It was all just above 0 in 95. Then it increased. And then I talk about the next few years and I give some numbers. And then I talk about the highest years, the most growth. And then I support all of this with numbers. Now you'll be able to look at this at the end if they can send you a copy of this. But basically, this is what you have to do. And then when you put it all together, it'll be something like this on your test paper. I've just put all 3 of those things together. It's 180 words. So it's at least 150. And the examiner will read this, and then they'll give you a score. There are many possible task ones. You might get a pie chart. You might get a line graph. You might get 2 line graphs or 2 or 3 pie charts. In this example, I've given you one of each just to show you. In your response, you would have the introduction, the pie chart shows, and the graph, the line graph shows, and then one sentence overall. Then you could have one paragraph about the pie chart, and then one paragraph about the line graph, the most important features and numbers to support what you say. And this one I have here, it's 184 words. And then the examiner is going to read through this and look at your grammar, look at your vocabulary, look at all of the information you've given, and then they're going to give you a score, which I'll explain in a moment. You could get a process, or you could get a map. The same thing. Introduction, have an overall. You could count the number of steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's say there are 8 steps shown in this process from digging until delivery. And then you'll just go one by one and describe this. Same thing with a map. They're just trying to give you different things to summarize. And the reason they have some of these that are very complex or difficult is because they're trying, they know that some people prepare and practice, and some people even try to memorize responses. But you can't do that. You have to prepare, because it'll be an introduction, one sentence summary, and then the features. You have to be ready with whatever you get. So the examiner will read your paper, and they're going to look, did you have a clear overview? Did you show the key features and have numbers? They're going to look, is it organized? Is it cohesive? Can they follow it? Does it make sense? Is it logical? Then they're going to look at the vocabulary and the grammar. Each of these would be 25% of your score. Now, you won't know what each of these were. You'll only know the final score at the end. But the examiner will look at these 4 things. So you want to make sure you write so that you get high scores in all of these. For example, vocabulary. Don't just use the same word again and again and again. Use a different word if you know a different word. Use a pronoun, it or he or they. Vocabulary, another word for vocabulary is lexis. So, they're going to look and see if you know any less common language. Same thing with the grammar. It's the range and the accuracy. So if you make a lot of mistakes, it's still okay if you have a range of sentences and you use complex structures. The complex structures means you don't only use simple sentences. I am Douglas. My name is Douglas. I am here. I am talking. I am looking. These are all grammatically correct, but they're simple sentences. To get a 6 or higher, you have to use complex ones. So you could say, the person presenting today, comma, whose name is Douglas, comma, is recommending that we use complex structures. Now that's an example of more complex language. So if you want high scores, you have to use at least some less common vocabulary and some complex structures in the grammar. As I said, don't spend any more than 20 minutes on task 1. You have to spend 40 minutes on task 2. Task 2 is a summary. It's just an essay. I'm sure everybody's written a lot of essays in high school as an undergraduate. So task 2, they want to see an essay. So it'll be 4 or 5 paragraphs, maybe 6 paragraphs, maybe 7 paragraphs, but it's got to be at least 3 paragraphs. If it's less than 3 paragraphs, it's not an essay. I recommend 4 or 5 or 6 paragraphs. And you have to answer all parts of the task at least 250 words. And this is important because if you don't have at least 250 words, they'll mark you down. So spend about 40 minutes. And as I said, task 2 counts more than task 1. So it's important you spend more time. In task 2, analyze the question, make a plan. Don't start writing unless you know what you're going to write. Make a plan and then write. After you write, make sure you read it, proofread it. No grammar mistakes, no vocabulary mistakes. Question types. Now, this is the problem. There will be many different question types, but in the end, you know what they're looking for. An essay. 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 good paragraphs that answer all parts of the question. If they tell you to answer, do you agree or disagree, you have to choose either you agree or you disagree, or half and half, 50-50. In your essay, you have to have either agree or disagree, or the 50-50 somehow. To what extent do you agree or disagree? This is the same thing. It's just they want to have an argument, a well-written argument on one side or the other or both. There's another one called discuss A and B, discuss this and that. You have to discuss both sides. If you only discuss one, you'll get a lower score. They might ask, does A outweigh B? Meaning A is more important, or A is worse, or A is more negative, or A has more advantages. You have to talk about both sides. They want to hear about A and B. There's another one that scares a lot of test takers, and this is discuss both sides and give your own opinion. This has 3 different parts. The examiner wants to hear about A and B and they also want to read your opinion. It's very important that if you have that question type, you have 3 different parts. And then there are many other types of questions that you could get. Again, which is why I recommend you practice, get some preparation first, take a course, download some practice questions. In the end, you want one good essay, 250 words, answering all parts of the question. If the question is this: describe some of the problems that overpopulation causes and suggest at least one solution, you have to have at least 2 problems. And you have to have at least 1 solution. If you don't have 2 or more problems and 1 or more solution, you cannot get a band 6. So it's very important you answer all parts of the question. The examiner will read your essay. Is it clear? Did you answer all parts of the question? Did you use paragraphs? Is everything logical? And then, like task 1, they'll look at the vocabulary and the grammar. An example, you could get this question for task 2. Some people say that school students should wear school uniforms. Other people say that students should be able to choose what they wear. Discuss both views and give your own opinion. So you need to answer why some people think school uniforms are good and why some people think school uniforms are not that good and students should be able to choose, and give your own opinion. So before you start writing, make sure you think about why is it good to wear school uniforms. Have a couple of reasons and think about what are some negative features of wearing a school uniform, and then what your opinion is. And then you'd be able to write an essay. Hopefully, you'll have an introductory paragraph, have a thesis statement. This essay will discuss both views and end with my opinion. You'll have 1 paragraph about why students should wear school uniforms, 1 paragraph about why students should be free to choose what they wear, and then 1 paragraph, your opinion. That's 4 paragraphs. That's enough. If you still have time, you can write a concluding paragraph, just summarize your intro again, and that's 5 paragraphs. That's a good essay. However, don't use any titles or subtitles or bullets or anything. They're only looking for text. Don't use any bullet points or numbers. It has to be just a normal summary if you're trying to get a band 6. We have to keep moving because the time is going by so fast. The speaking test, as I said earlier, it's 11 to 14 minutes. It can be face to face, but it can be done in person or by video call. That'll depend on several different factors. When you register, that information should be clear. There are 3 different parts. Part 1 is some simple questions about you. Part 2 is 2 minutes to talk about a topic that they'll give you. And then part 3 is 4 to 5 minutes, some general questions about the same topic in part 2. So for example, in part 1, they might ask, where are you from? They might ask about your hometown. What do you do? It could be sports or TV, news. These are just simple questions. What is your favorite sport? My favorite sport is swimming because I can swim in Indonesia year-round. So I've given a long answer that has a reason. Part 2, 2 minutes. They'll give you a topic and you talk about it for 2 minutes. And then part 3 will be questions about whatever you were talking about in part 2. So in this one, if they ask you to talk about what you'd like to do in the future, if you had a chance to do it. So you would probably say, I would like to do a postgraduate degree at Australian National University. And then you'll talk for 2 minutes about that. And then in part 3, they'll say, okay, you were talking about planning to do a PhD. Now I'm going to ask you some general questions, and they'll talk maybe about making plans or predicting the future. These are not about you. These are about people. So you don't want to say I. For part 3, it'll be about people. People in Indonesia don't usually make a plan for their day-to-day activities, or people in Indonesia always make a plan for their day-to-day activities. So in part 3, you'll be talking general rather than personal. And the scoring is pretty similar to the writing for the vocabulary and the grammar. Those will be the same. Fluency is another one. They want to know if you're able to talk at length, no noticeable pauses because you don't know the word. So in that case, I wouldn't be able to get more than a 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. If you're able to usually keep talking with just occasional hesitations, it would be a 5 or a 6. If you're able to keep talking and not have noticeable effort, that's like a 7, 8, 9. And they'll also look at your pronunciation. Does it sound like English? Are you using English? I'm going to keep going here. So when you do the speaking test, be calm, be natural, smile, enjoy it. They're going to talk to you just to hear your responses. So imagine you're talking to a friend. Give full responses. Give reasons when you can. Ask the examiner to repeat if you don't understand. Sorry, could you repeat the question, please? Use a variety of lexis, vocabulary. Use a variety of sentences, not just simple sentences. In part 2, make a plan so that you know what you're going to write. Who, what, where, when, why. And then you'll be able to talk for 2 minutes, and the examiner will just sit and listen. Use good pronunciation. For example, R, not R. Divide your sentences into good groups. I am a student is correct, but I am a student is not. So I am a student. So use good pronunciation whenever you can. Now I had a sample, but I'm not going to play this. I will send. I actually sent you the link to this, so you'll be able to listen to this part 3. You'll be able to listen to that video. It's online. It's a woman named Mariana, and she's an example of a band 6. So this will be some post-session homework for you, okay? So one of the files that I sent has that link, and it has the explanation of the band scores. And then when you take the test, it'll be something like this. It'll be you and an examiner. Let's move on to the listening test. The listening test is 30 minutes, or approximately 30 minutes. There are 40 questions in 4 sections. Each question is 1 mark. There's no penalty for wrong answers, so try to answer all the questions. you get marks for the correct ones. British or American spellings are okay, either one. You'll hear 4 different things for 4 different sections. And you'll have to answer questions based on what you hear. For the paper test, you'll use a pencil and you write all your answers in the booklet. And then at the end, the CD will give you 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. On the computer test, again, the test is the same, but it's done on the computer. You type your answers into the question spaces. There's no time at the end to transfer. And for the computer test, you'll use headphones, but for the paper test, no headphones. So in the listening test, it's very easy because they'll tell you to look at the questions first. So you look at the questions and then you just listen for those answers. The answers are always in the same order as in the booklet. You'll hear synonyms. In the booklet, it might say daily, and in the recording, they'll say each day, or on the paper, it'll say in 2 weeks, but in the recording, maybe you'll hear a fortnight. The same thing, something like twice or 2 times. So be prepared for synonyms. You'll hear the recording only once, so if you miss one, forget it. Go to the next one. Various ways of writing are okay. British or American, the same with things like dates. There are many ways to write dates, and as long as they're okay in English, they're okay on the test. Clear handwriting is important because if they can't read your answer, it's wrong. We're going to try a sample listening test. This is a file that I sent called listening test. You'll hear 10 questions. If you could write these on a piece of paper. This is the test. So hopefully you have this. I'm going to play from start to finish, and you'll answer these 10 questions. And then I'll give you the answers.
What happened, Happy?
Doug, sorry, there is no sound on this slide.
So you can't hear it.
We cannot hear it.
Oh, I don't know why. Yeah, like I said, I figured we would have a difficulty here.
I think you have stop share and you share again, but you share with sound.
Share with sound.
Yes, you stop share firstly, and after that you share, but you have to share with sound before you share your screen.
Share with sound.
First, you click unshare, stop sharing first, and then you
Okay.
start share screen. But before you start, there's an option on the bottom left corner, Douglas.
Yes.
There's a tick box where you can just tick share with sound.
Share
When you
with
click
sound.
share
corner.
screen now, you will find out the options on the bottom left corner.
Wait. Share sound. Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Cool.
Let me try again.
You're welcome.
Just a moment. Can you hear that? Not yet?
No, sir.
Okay.
No sound.
Let me try that again. Again, I don't normally do Zoom, so my apologies. It said I had to attach some I had to download something. So let me try again.
Including 3 restaurants and
That's clear.
Can you hear it? Okay, I'll try it again.
Yes, we can.
Section 2. You will hear a radio broadcast called Focus on the Arts. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16 on page 4. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Hello, and welcome to Focus on the Arts. I'm your host, Dave Green, and this is your very own local radio programme. Every Friday evening, we put the spotlight on different arts and culture facilities and look at the shows and events that are on offer in the coming week. And today, the focus is on the National Arts Centre. Now, if you don't already know it yourself, I'm sure you've all heard of it. It's famous throughout the world as one of the major venues for classical music. But did you know that it's actually much more than just a place to hear concerts? The centre itself is a huge complex that caters for a great range of arts. Under a single roof it houses concert rooms, theatres, cinemas, art galleries and a wonderful public library, as well as service facilities including 3 restaurants and a bookshop. So, at any one time, the choice of entertainment there is simply enormous. So, how did they manage to build such a big arts complex right in the heart of the city? Well, the area was completely destroyed by bombs during the war in 1940. So the opportunity was taken to create a cultural centre that would be what they called the city's gift to the nation. Of course, it took a while for such a big project to get started, but it was planned in the 60s, built in the 70s, and eventually opened to the public in 1983. Ever since then, it has proved to be a great success. It's not privately owned, like many arts centres, but is still in public hands. It's run by the City Council. Both our National Symphony Orchestra and National Theatre Company were involved in the planning of the project, and they're now based there, giving regular performances every week. And as the centre is open 363 days of the year, there are plenty of performances to choose from.
Before you hear the rest of the broadcast, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20 on page 5. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
So, to give you some idea of what's on, and to help you choose from the many possibilities, we've made a selection of the star attractions. If you're interested in classical music, then we recommend you go along to the National on either Monday or Tuesday evening at 7:30 for a spectacular production of The Magic Flute, probably the most popular of all Mozart's operas. It's in the Garden Hall, and tickets start at only £8, but you'll have to be early if you want to get them that cheap. And remember, it's only on for those 2 evenings. For those more interested in the cinema, you might like to see the new Canadian film, which is showing on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. in Cinema 2, and that's called 3 Lives. It's had fantastic reviews, and tickets cost just £4.50, which is a reduction on the usual price of £5.50. So it's really good value, especially for such a great movie. But you can see the centre's main attraction at the weekend, because on Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m, they're showing a wonderful new exhibition that hasn't been seen anywhere else in Europe yet. It's a collection of Chinese art called Faces of China. That's in Gallery 1, and it has some really fascinating paintings and sculptures by leading artists from all over China. And the good news is that it's completely free, so don't miss it. So why not go along to the National Arts Centre next week for one or all of these great events? And you can always pick up a programme and check out all the other performances and exhibitions on offer, or coming soon, on almost every day of the year. Next week, we'll be looking at the new Museum of Science.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Okay. So that's what you should be expecting when you do the listening test. If you could correct your answers right now, you would have to have exactly what is here in one way or another. No more than 3 words and or a number. Number 12, bookshop or bookstore. Number 13, planned. 14, 1983 or the 1980s. Both are okay. Managed by the city council. 363 days. Garden Hall or the Garden Hall. 3 Lives. £4.50. And Faces of China. So you'd have to have all of those exactly like the answer key. Otherwise, they're going to mark it wrong. It's just a clerical person who marks them. So don't deviate from what you hear. Now we're running out of time, so I'm just going to mention about the reading test, and then we're going to go to questions and answers. Okay, so the reading test is 60 minutes, and you'll have 40 questions. The same as the listening. Each question is worth 1 mark, so try to answer all the questions. There's the paper or the computer. Again, the test is the same. But in the paper test, you'll have time to transfer your answers at the end. In the computer test, there's no time. I recommend do the passage that looks the easiest, because there's 3 reading passages. Do the one that looks the easiest or the one that you know about the most first. Look at the questions before reading. Only read to find the answers. Don't read every word. Just read to find the answers. Some questions are easier. For example, if you're labeling a diagram, you just have to find the section that explains about the diagram. Those are easy. Some questions go in order. True, false, not given, they go in order. So find the first one, then you'll have the next one and the next one. They always go in order. That makes it easier. And turn them into questions. For example, international trade is increasing at a greater rate than the world economy. Make that a question. Is international trade increasing at a greater rate than the world economy? That makes it easier to answer the questions. We won't have time to do the reading test. I apologize. Again, I recommend use IELTS.org for free information, free downloads. Cambridge IELTS books are also good sources. Keep using your English every day. Take a course if you can, because that will give somebody a chance to give you feedback on especially your speaking and your writing. There's a prediction test you could take. Take the test when you feel confident and well prepared. For more information, contact us. You can sign up, register for the test at IELTS.org. And if you do this, they'll connect you to ALF to register. Happy? I think we have time for a couple of questions.
Yes, so
Yeah.
Papa, if you'd like to ask to Douglas, please raise your hand, then unmute yourself, and you can ask directly to Douglas. We still got about 5 minutes for Q&A session. Just raise your hand and open your camera and ask to Douglas directly. Okay, Bapak Rion Patimura.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Douglas, I have some difficulties when I try to do some IELTS listening test. So have you technique or strategy how we can manage our listening and our mind and our hand to writing? Because if you lost one, like you mentioned before, you lost everything. Like in the last example you give, I lost in number 13. After that, 14 and 15. So that is very difficult for me. I take the IELTS test last year's, and the lowest my level very low in the listening test. So I want to get some solution for that. Thank you, Mr. Douglas.
It sounds like you just need to practice. How many? Can I ask you a question first? How many did you get correct today? 7 out of 10.
Oh, yes, that is 6. 6. Correct.
Okay, so 6 times 4 is actually 24. So, you know, that could, if you had 6 in all 4 sections, that would be a 6. 6 times 4 equals 24. So that would be around a 6. So you're, you know, that means you've got a good grasp of English. I think you just need to get more listening practice. Also, if you take a course, they will help you look at the questions, read before the listening, so that you know exactly what you're listening for, what kind of word form, or is it a number? And then you have to just listen for that. If you miss it, like number 13, you should forget it. Go to number 14. you should never miss 2 or 3 in a row. So I think you should keep practicing, get some practice tests.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. So one more, just a little question. I just want to know what the best test you suggest for us. That is conventional test, paper-based or computer. So because I think the good reason if we took the computer, because we have a headset and it take more expensive. But what do you think? Maybe you can give your opinion on that. Thank you.
I agree. If you have the option of doing the computer test, yeah, you should do the computer test. If you're typing and your computer skills are good. You know, my Zoom skills are not good because I don't teach on Zoom and I don't normally do sessions on Zoom, but my typing skills are very good. I would take the computer test. Having said that, if your handwriting is really bad, there again, you should do the computer test, you know, because if you do the paper test and your handwriting is not readable, you'll get a low score. But the test is the same. If you do the paper test, the sound should be good enough. Everybody should be able to hear it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Rian. There's another question on chat box, Doug. Is it possible if we use mixed accents while speaking tests?
I don't really know what mixed accents are.
Maybe British and American, but we use it at the same time in the speaking test.
Well, the examiner will be looking at you as if you are just someone speaking English. So if it sounds normal, if it sounds natural, not a problem.
Okay, so the answer is no problem to Cynthia. Thank you for your question. One more question, please. The last question before we move to the next session. Is there any questions? Okay, Bapak or Ibu Nurzaka, please unmute yourself and open your camera. Okay, Pak Nurzaka. Could you ask directly to Douglas? Okay, there is no sound. Okay, this is the last question from Pak Putra Ramadan. Does stuttering caused by nervousness when we are taking speaking tests, will we get our point deducted or the examiner will ignore it?
Well, remember, even the examiner might be nervous talking to you. You know, it goes two ways. Try to talk to them as if they're your friend. You know, they don't want to be your friend, but they want you to perform well. They just want to hear you talk. So again, that's why get a lot of practice talking to other people. In your office, you know, you can have a couple of practice tests and you can interview each other, but try to sound natural. But yeah, if you're overly nervous and you have a lot of hesitations and it really impacts on whether they understand you or not, it could get you a lower mark. That's true. So you want to make sure that you're able to keep talking and you don't sound like, yeah.
Okay, so that is the answer. So practice with your friends, that is the key. Okay, next, is it okay to use some idioms in the speaking test, Doug?
Yes, absolutely. Because to get a band 7 or higher, if you look at grammar, They want idioms. They want unusual things. They want a good mix. They want to know that you're flexible and you can use a lot of different things.
Okay, and then Pak Nurzaka, because maybe we cannot hear you. So Pak Nurzaka asks, when it comes to the writing test, I often feel like having no idea to write or to continue the topic. Are there any tips to keep the idea flowing?
Well, you know, your future depends on getting a high score. And for IELTS, the task 1 and the task 2, it's given to you, you know, there's no option of coming up with ideas or not. You have to answer what is given. So make a plan. Like my example earlier, why some people think school uniforms shouldn't be required. Well, if you ask someone Indonesian that, maybe they have no idea. But if you ask an American, they know definitely they shouldn't have to wear school uniforms, you know. It's a right. It's a liberty. It's a freedom to choose what you wear every day. Someone Indonesian might not have that idea, but you need to think outside of the box. You need to come up with some good ideas. Try to impress the examiner. So if you get a mental block, think about what you could tell the examiner or what you could write to make them think that you know, you have a good head on your shoulders and you can come up with a good response. Try to impress them like you try to impress your boss. But make a plan.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. I think that is the last question because our time is limited today. Let's give an online applause for Douglas Lerquin. Thank you, Douglas, for sharing with us.
My pleasure. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Oke, baik Bapak Ibu sekalian, kita akan melanjutkan sesi kita untuk sesi yang kedua dengan Bapak Andre Maure tentang sharing session LPDP Scholarship. Tetapi sebelumnya saya memperkenalkan Ibu Hari dari IALF Global. Ibu Hari akan sedikit sharing mengenai apa itu IALF Global, kemudian nanti disusul ke sesi selanjutnya dengan Bapak Andre. Ibu Hari silakan.
Baik, terima kasih. Selamat pagi semuanya. Terima kasih atas waktunya. Perkenalkan, saya Hari dari IALF Global, dan sejalan dengan tema kita hari ini tentang IELTS and how about your future study. So, sebelum kita beranjak ke sharing session tentang beasiswa LPDP dan juga tentang sharing dari Bapak Andre mengenai pengalaman beliau sebagai international student di UK. Sebelum itu, saya ingin memperkenalkan salah satu service di IALF. Apakah bisa kelihatan PPT-nya?
Oke, sudah terlihat.
Oke, baik. Jadi, sebelumnya kita sudah membahas tentang IELTS, right? So, jadi sebagaimana ibu-ibu dan bapak-bapak dan rekan-rekan sekalian telah mengetahui bahwa di IALF kita bisa ada layanan IELTS preparation course, right? Dan kita juga mempunyai IELTS test di IALF. Nah, setelah IELTS test dan IELTS preparation course dan IELTS test, next-nya apa nih? Apakah sudah cukup? Nah, kita mempunyai layanan bernama IALF Global yang fokus mengenai layanan study overseas. Sebelum kita melihat lebih lanjut mengenai layanan yang ada di IALF Global, saya ingin memperkenalkan our amazing team. Ada Ibu Rini yang merupakan Senior Counselor di ILF Global Bali. Juga ada Pak Ketut, Senior Counselor di ILF Global Bali. Kemudian ada Ibu Vita Kanisha, merupakan Senior Counselor di ILF Global Bali. Lalu ada Ibu Marsha, Senior Counselor di ILF Global Jakarta. Kemudian saya, Hari. Oke, lalu apa sih ini yang bisa kita tawarkan di ILF Global? Kita fokus mengenai study overseas, yaitu salah satunya consultation mengenai rencana studi universitas di luar negeri yang sesuai dengan rencana studi. Lalu kita juga assist university application. Kemudian kita juga assist visa application. Dan juga termasuk accommodation and pickup, airport pickup. Okay. Jadi setelah melakukan IELTS preparation di ILF, kemudian mengambil tes IELTS, untuk yang kita nggak berhenti di sana saja layanannya, kita juga akan membantu rekan-rekan sekalian mengenai rencana studi di luar negerinya. Beberapa negara yang kita punya di ILF Global, jadi ada Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Ireland, United Kingdom, the United Kingdom, USA, and several European countries. Okay, so it's very brief, don't worry. So next we have our special guest, Bapak Andrianus Amin Singgi Maulek. Bapak Andre, beliau merupakan LPDP awardee, and he studied in the University of Bristol, the United Kingdom. He studied Master of Science in Education, Learning Technology and Society. And that's it for me. So before I give the next session to Pak Andre, I just want to share the information that we will assist you as every step of the way, not just IELTS preparation, not just IELTS test, but also your plan to study abroad. Either it's about your visa application, your study application or university application. Jadi kita semua ada layanannya. Nggak cuma kita mulai dari awal, dari mulai preparation, preparation untuk ambil IELTS test, kemudian preparation course, IELTS test, dan kemudian berencana berangkat ke luar negerinya. Seperti itu. Oke. Ya. Sebentar lagi Bapak Andre akan memulai sessionnya. Sekali lagi, Bapak Andre merupakan LPDP awardee dan mengambil Master of Science in Education di University of Bristol, United Kingdom. Beliau juga merupakan English teacher and also Indonesian teacher. And yes, time and place is yours.
Terima kasih Mbak Harry yang sudah mengawali sesi yang kedua ya untuk info session tentang beasiswa LPDP dan juga sedikit pengalaman saya kuliah di luar negeri. Ya, pertama-tama saya ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada Ibu Rini dari ILF Global Bali yang memberikan kesempatan kepada saya untuk bisa hadir di depan Bapak Ibu semuanya secara virtual, dan terima kasih juga untuk tim ILF Global Bali dan ILF Global Jakarta dan juga semua rekan-rekan panitia dari BMKG Jakarta ya. Oke. Ya. Pada sesi yang kedua ini saya akan berbagi informasi dan pengalaman tentang pendaftaran beasiswa LPDP, kemudian saya akan berbagi informasi sedikit tentang tahapan-tahapan seleksi yang ada dalam rangkaian pendaftaran beasiswa LPDP tersebut, dan di bagian ketiga, yang tidak kalah penting, saya akan membagikan pengalaman saya tinggal dan juga kuliah di Bristol, salah satu kota di Southwest atau bagian barat daya UK atau Inggris. Baik, saya akan mulai dengan mengapa LPDP. Ya, jadi kalau Bapak Ibu mengunjungi website LPDP, Bapak Ibu bisa menemukan informasi bahwa LPDP berkomitmen untuk mempersiapkan pemimpin dan profesional masa depan, serta mendorong inovasi demi terwujudnya Indonesia yang sejahtera, demokratis, dan berkeadilan. LPDP menyelenggarakan program beasiswa magister atau doctoral untuk putra-putri terbaik seperti saya dan Bapak Ibu semua, dan juga memberikan pendanaan riset komersial atau implementatif untuk mendorong inovasi serta rehabilitasi fasilitas pendidikan yang rusak karena bencana alam. Info selengkapnya Bapak Ibu bisa cek di www.lpdp.kemenkeu.go.id. Nah, di tahapan seleksi ya Bapak Ibu, ini kita tentunya perlu kalau memutuskan untuk memilih beasiswa LPDP. Selain beasiswa LPDP sebenarnya Bapak Ibu ada banyak sekali beasiswa yang lain. Kalau dari Inggris sendiri ada beasiswa Chevening. Mungkin Bapak Ibu juga sudah tahu bahwa hampir semua negara-negara English speaking countries atau negara yang memang terdepan untuk pendidikan, mereka punya beasiswa. Seperti Amerika juga punya Fulbright, dan tetangga kita Australia juga punya AAS. Jadi Bapak Ibu bisa mencari informasi sebanyak-banyaknya tentang beasiswa-beasiswa selain LPDP, dan juga dari negara-negara Eropa, bahkan negara Asia seperti Jepang, Korea, Singapura, yang juga pendidikannya sangat-sangat baik saya bilang ya. Untuk persiapan pendaftaran, Bapak Ibu, semua informasi mulai dari dokumen, kemudian berbagai persyaratan di masing-masing website beasiswa itu sudah ada. Jadi tugas kita kalau ingin melamar beasiswa, maka kita harus mempersiapkan semua dokumen yang diminta tanpa terkecuali ya Bapak Ibu. Jadi itu adalah salah satu syarat utama, karena kalau saya fokus dengan beasiswa LPDP, di sini ada 3 tahap seperti yang Bapak Ibu lihat di screen. Yang pertama yaitu seleksi administrasi, kemudian yang kedua ada seleksi bakat skolastik, dan yang ketiga seleksi substansi. Nah, untuk seleksi administrasi berarti semua kelengkapan dokumen, berkas-berkas, mulai dari sertifikat atau ijazah Bapak Ibu, kemudian juga essay, semuanya harus dilengkapi, dan itu butuh waktu persiapan. Dan untuk bisa memastikan bahwa semua administrasi yang kita kumpulkan itu baik dan benar, maka ini kita kalau sambil bekerja ini perlu luangkan waktu khusus ya Bapak Ibu, sehingga aplikasi yang kita kumpulkan benar-benar bisa sesuai dengan apa yang diminta oleh pihak penyelenggara beasiswa. Dan kalau tahap ini kita sudah lulus, maka kita bisa masuk ke tahap berikutnya. Sebelumnya itu ada pada masa pandemi seleksi berbasis komputer, tapi sekarang berubah kebijakannya, ada seleksi bakat skolastik. Ini seperti tes potensi akademik juga, atau tes psikologi Bapak Ibu, dan kemampuan logika seperti itu. Kemudian yang terakhir seleksi substansi ini termasuk dalamnya interview. Jadi para panitia akan menunjuk beberapa panelis yang akan mewawancarai Bapak Ibu, apakah betul-betul sudah punya tekad yang bulat untuk melanjutkan studi di luar negeri, apakah sudah memenuhi persyaratan, dan juga punya motivasi yang besar dan memang layak untuk mendapatkan beasiswa dari LPDP tersebut. Nah, untuk informasi pendaftarannya, Bapak Ibu, ini mulai besok sebenarnya ya, sudah dibuka untuk tahap 1 ya. sedangkan tahap kedua itu di pertengahan tahun ini. Jadi tahap 1 itu prosesnya cukup panjang. Ini Bapak Ibu bisa lihat waktunya 6 bulan, dari bulan Januari sampai Juni. Jadi itu rangkaian tahapan tentang beasiswa LPDP. Untuk tahapan kedua nanti akan dimulai bulan Juni hingga bulan November. Detailnya ini timeline-nya Bapak Ibu bisa lihat. Kalau yang tahap 1 dari besok itu dibuka pendaftarannya dan penutupannya tanggal 25 Februari. Artinya Bapak Ibu punya waktu 1 bulan untuk menyiapkan segala sesuatunya. Tapi kalau memang belum sempat, waktunya tidak cukup, Bapak Ibu belum siap, ya Bapak Ibu bisa mengikuti gelombang yang kedua atau periode beasiswa tahap kedua. Nah, kalau Bapak Ibu berhasil, misalnya sudah mempersiapkan beasiswa, lamaran atau aplikasi beasiswanya, maka bisa disubmit dan semoga dalam waktu 1 bulan ini semuanya bisa terkumpulkan, semua syarat bisa terpenuhi. Nah, di tanggal 27 akan dilakukan seleksi administrasi, kemudian tanggal 14 Maret ada pengumuman seleksi administrasi. Kalau Bapak Ibu lolos, maka Bapak Ibu akan masuk ke tahap berikutnya, yaitu seleksi bakat skolastik yang akan dimulai tanggal 27 Maret dan pengumumannya di bulan April, yaitu tanggal 5. Dan ketika Bapak Ibu juga lolos, maka Bapak Ibu bisa masuk ke tahap selanjutnya, yaitu seleksi substansi. Ini seleksi yang paling krusial, paling akhir, termasuk wawancara, ya. Dan kalau ini Bapak Ibu lolos, maka Bapak Ibu berhak untuk mendapatkan beasiswa yang akan diumumkan pada tanggal 8 Juni 2003. Nah, kalau tahap 1 belum sempat ikut, maka Bapak Ibu berpeluang untuk mengikuti tahap kedua. Nah, itu sedikit informasi. Nanti saya akan alokasikan waktu Bapak Ibu untuk Q&A, jadi bisa tanya-tanya lebih banyak dan saya bisa share pengalaman. Di bagian yang berikut saya akan berbagi informasi kenapa saya memilih Bristol, kota Bristol. Jadi kota Bristol ini adalah kalau dalam bahasa Inggris, it's a small city that feels like a big city. Jadi ini kota kecil yang vibes-nya, rasanya itu seperti kota besar. Jadi tidak terlalu besar seperti London. Kalau London itu mirip Jakarta, crowded banget Bapak Ibu. Tapi kalau Bristol itu saya pribadi sangat nyaman dan sangat kerasan, hampir nggak mau pulang ya dari Bristol ya. Tapi karena ada masa periode kuliah dan karena mendapatkan beasiswa itu wajib pulang dan sesuai perjanjian saya harus mengabdi di Indonesia 2N+1, artinya 2 kali masa studi ditambah 1 tahun. Nah, karena saya kuliahnya, masternya kalau di UK rata-rata 1 tahun ya Bapak Ibu. Ya, jadi kalau Bapak Ibu ingin kuliah master di sana, ya itu waktunya sangat cepat ya dibandingkan negara Australia atau Amerika atau negara kita yang memerlukan waktu 2 tahun. Untuk pendidikan dokter atau PhD itu bisa ditempuh dalam waktu 3-4 tahun, tergantung jurusan yang ditempuh. Nah, sedikit informasi tentang Bristol, Bapak Ibu bisa lihat di sini. Di Bristol, kalau Bapak Ibu lihat profil saya juga waktu tinggal di Bristol, kuliah di Bristol, menjabat sebagai the President of Indonesian Students Association, atau lebih dikenal dengan PPI, atau Perhimpunan Pelajar Indonesia di kota Bristol dan Bath. Ya, kota Bath ini hanya 30 menit kalau naik bus atau naik kereta dari Bristol. Ini kota wisata yang dekat dengan Bristol. Jadi itu juga salah satu kampus terbaik. Jadi University of Bath, University of Bristol ini top 10 di UK ya. Masuk 10 besar bersama dengan universitas seperti Oxford, Cambridge, kemudian beberapa universitas di London, University of Manchester, kemudian juga beberapa university yang terkenal di Scotland, Northern Ireland, dan juga di Wales ya Bapak Ibu. Nah, di Bristol sendiri itu selain ada PPI, juga ada komunitas orang Indonesia atau Indonesian Society. Nah, ini suasana kota Bristol dengan ikon-ikonnya. Yang ini ada Wales Memorial, kemudian ini ada Cathedral dekat City Council-nya atau gedung wali kotanya, dan ini ikonnya Clifton Suspension Bridge, tempat yang sangat indah ya Bapak Ibu, bisa jalan kaki dari kampus. Dan kalau ikon ini Wales Memorial, ini adalah bagian dari University of Bristol, tempat kami wisuda, dan juga ada library atau resource centers yang besar untuk semua mahasiswa belajar di sana. Ini perpustakaan untuk Faculty of Social Sciences and Law. Ya, saya sendiri kuliah di Bristol di School of Education, itu bagian dari Faculty of Social Sciences and Law. Jadi saya juga biasa belajar di gedung Wales Memorial ini. Ya, tidak jauh dari gedung SOE atau School of Education. Ya, dan sangat dekat, bahkan hanya bisa jalan kaki 5-10 menit ke City Center dekat Harbor Side ya. Itu ada banyak restoran, cafe, bars di sana untuk senang-senang, dan hanya jalan kaki untuk ke semua pusat perbelanjaannya. Kotanya sangat nyaman, aman, dan juga banyak sekali international students dari berbagai negara, dari berbagai belahan dunia yang datang untuk kuliah di sana, kemudian jatuh cinta dengan kota Bristol, akhirnya menetap di sana. Jadi Bapak Ibu bisa bertemu dengan orang dari berbagai latar belakang, etnis, budaya, dan itu akan sangat memperkaya pengalaman dan juga wawasan dan informasi untuk Bapak Ibu semua yang memutuskan untuk kuliah di Bristol, sama dengan kota-kota yang lain juga ya di Inggris. Nah, untuk videonya saya mohon izin, sepertinya saya punya technical issues yang sama dengan Pak Douglas tadi, saya udah tes, jadi saya akan langsung share dari YouTube ya Bapak Ibu. Ini sekitar informasi tentang Universitas Bristol ya, itu seperti apa sih Universitas Bristol dan program-programnya seperti apa. Saya akan share videonya, Bapak Ibu bisa lihat. Here we go. Bisa dengar ya Bapak Ibu? Iya, itu tadi ya sedikit informasi tentang University of Bristol. Jadi Bapak Ibu bisa lihat ya profil-profil dan juga achievement-achievement dan beberapa label yang dimiliki oleh University of Bristol. Salah satunya itu seperti yang saya sudah sampaikan, University of Bristol top 10 di UK, dan untuk research atau penelitian itu bahkan masuk di peringkat 5 atau top 5 ya Bapak Ibu. Ya. Kemudian saya akan lanjut untuk sharing selanjutnya. Ya. Untuk suasana perkuliahannya gimana Bapak Ibu? Ya, perkuliahan itu terdiri dari lecture. Ya, kalau lecture itu kita cenderung pasif ya. Jadi biasanya hanya sejam atau bisa 1,5 jam. Dan nanti dosen atau profesor itu akan mempresentasikan, membagikan semua informasi pengetahuan yang perlu kita ketahui, dan kita di sini hanya mendengar dan mencatat ya Bapak Ibu. Kalaupun tidak sempat hadir, setiap lecture ini ada recordingnya, dan sebagai mahasiswa kita punya akses untuk masuk ke e-learningnya sehingga kita bisa tetap catch up dengan perkuliahan tersebut. Sedangkan untuk lebih mendalami lagi lecture atau kuliah ini, kita ada yang namanya tutorial. Jadi tutorial ini kita dibagi dalam kelompok yang lebih kecil. Kalau lecture itu bisa ratusan ya Bapak Ibu, bisa langsung 150, 300 mahasiswa sekaligus masuk ya yang mengikuti lecture. Tapi kalau tutorial kita dibagi dalam kelompok yang lebih kecil, itu sekitar 20 orang per kelas, dan biasanya ada satu profesor atau dosen, dan juga ada beberapa asisten atau tutors yang akan mendampingi, dan kita lebih banyak diskusi, sharing. Dan untuk bisa diskusi, Bapak Ibu, kita harus banyak membaca. Jadi setiap mata kuliah, setiap unit, setiap pertemuan, itu bahkan sudah ada reading list-nya, daftar bacaan. Artinya sebelum mengikuti tutorial itu atau perkuliahan itu, kita memang harus baca. Ya, karena saking banyaknya kadang-kadang kita nggak bisa baca semua. Jadi salah satu strategi atau tips-nya yang bisa saya bagikan, Bapak Ibu, kalau nanti berhasil untuk kuliah di sana, maka carilah teman dan bentuklah reading group. Jadi Bapak Ibu bisa membagi-bagi nih, ya, yang mana yang baca yang misalnya kalau ada 4 atau 5 jurnal yang harus dibaca, bisa bagi-bagi tugas. Jadi nanti begitu ketemu setelah reading itu, masing-masing share presentasi, dia udah punya notes dari main points yang ada di setiap jurnal untuk dibagikan. Jadi kita bisa share, exchange knowledge. Jadi kita nggak perlu baca semua sangat detail, kita bisa exchange notes dari teman-teman di reading group kita. Itu salah satu strategi, selain kita memang belajar mandiri ya, dan itu strategi yang paling cepat. Kalau kita diskusi biasanya bertukar ilmu, bertukar pemikiran, informasi, itu lebih mudah kita memahami sesuatu. Kemudian ini suasana yang seperti kuliah ya, bahkan di beberapa kesempatan kita juga bisa melakukan presentasi, berbagi pengalaman, seperti Bapak Ibu bisa lihat di sini saat saya diminta untuk membagi pengalaman. Bahkan ketika sudah menjadi selesai kuliah bisa diundang kalau kita punya proyek yang menarik ya untuk dibagikan ke junior atau new batch ya. Nah, itu sangat-sangat memungkinkan, dan hubungan dengan dosen itu sangat-sangat dekat. Kita bisa sebagai teman, tetapi dalam hal akademis mereka sangat-sangat profesional Bapak Ibu. Jadi semua nilai, hasil ujian kita, hasil final assignment kita itu dinilai secara objektif. Ini suasana yang lain saat diskusi ya. Kemudian ada praktek juga, sharing informasi ya. Bapak Ibu bisa lihat. Kurang lebih seperti itu. Ya. Nah, kita juga kadang diberikan kesempatan untuk ini ya, ada semacam poster presentation. Jadi masing-masing grup kemudian presentasi tentang tugas kita, dan kelompok yang lain akan datang melihat presentasi kita dan memberikan pertanyaan untuk mengklarifikasi atau menggali informasi yang lebih banyak lagi tentang apa yang kita sajikan atau presentasikan. Kemudian ini suasana saat kita santai dengan dosen. Ini dosen saya, personal tutor saya. Kita juga ada kegiatan setiap term, bisa ini ya, punya waktu untuk gathering, piknik, atau have fun di sela-sela sibuk dan hektiknya kegiatan perkuliahan ya, Bapak Ibu. Ya, kita bisa santai-santai. Ini di Brandon Hill, tepat di belakang School of Education ya. Jadi suasananya sangat nyaman, Bapak Ibu. Ya, santai. Oke. Sedikit informasi, kemudian ya, ini informasi tentang PPI Bristol dan Bath, juga banyak aktivitas yang membuat rasa rindu atau kangen Indonesia itu terobati ya, karena kita juga sering ngadain gathering, kita buat kegiatan sports atau olahraga, kemudian ada workshop untuk sharing pengalaman. Jadi ini menyatukan semua mahasiswa Indonesia mulai dari tingkat bachelor's atau S1, kemudian master's, dan juga doctoral atau PhD. Kita selalu kumpul bareng, kita ngadain kegiatan bareng-bareng, dan juga berbagi suka duka ya bersama-sama, dan juga pada hari raya besar kita merayakan bersama-sama ya. Jadi kita betul-betul bersatu dan kuat dan menjadi duta Indonesia yang baik di sana. Dan kebersamaan kita ini juga membuat beberapa negara tetangga itu iri dengan soliditas komunitas Indonesia di Bristol ya, Bapak Ibu. Ya, ini saat kita kumpul-kumpul dengan teman-teman. Dan satu pengalaman yang tidak akan saya lupakan, saya juga mendapat funding dari KBRI melalui Adikbud, Atasnya Pendidikan dan Kebudayaan, untuk melaksanakan pembelajaran bahasa Indonesia di Bristol. Jadi saya ngajar teman-teman dari Inggris, dari Eropa, dari Afrika, dari Amerika, juga beberapa teman dari Asia, itu untuk bahasa dan budaya Indonesia, sambil kita memperkenalkan makanan-makanan Indonesia juga. Ya, ini sedikit dokumentasi ya Bapak Ibu. Ya, oke. Saya mungkin karena keterbatasan waktu mengakhiri sampai di sini presentasi. Sekarang kita masuk ke Q&A Bapak Ibu. Jadi kalau ada pertanyaan, saya akan dengan senang hati menjawab pertanyaan. Tapi sambil menunggu, saya mau kasih satu informasi penting, yaitu tips bagaimana kita menghadapi wawancara ya Bapak Ibu. Karena wawancara ini di tahap seleksi substansi ini sangat-sangat penting ya Bapak Ibu. Yang pertama yang harus Bapak Ibu lakukan adalah percaya diri, yakin bahwa Bapak Ibu sudah siap. Kemudian juga Bapak Ibu harus menguasai konten atau materi, esai, semua yang ditulis itu harus Bapak Ibu ketahui, dan juga harus punya goal, kemudian motivasi serta determinasi yang kuat untuk memang Bapak Ibu mau melanjutkan studi dan layak untuk mendapatkan beasiswa tersebut. Jadi tetap percaya diri, itu paling penting. Kemudian harus bisa memberikan jawaban yang realistis, ya, tidak bombastis atau posting, tapi juga realistis dan bisa betul-betul Bapak Ibu lakukan. Dan pengalaman kontribusi di masyarakat itu juga sangat penting, karena penyedia beasiswa ingin memberikan beasiswa bagi putra-putri Indonesia yang tidak hanya memberikan benefit untuk dirinya sendiri, tapi juga bisa memberikan dampak atau keuntungan bagi lingkungan sekitarnya, khususnya komunitas atau orang-orang yang ada di lingkungannya. Jadi itu yang bisa saya sampaikan. Sekarang kita akan masuk ke sesi Q&A. Saya kembalikan ke Mbak Hari untuk memimpin sesi ini ya, atau bisa langsung juga nggak apa-apa ya. Oke, makasih. Boleh raise hand Bapak Ibu yang ingin bertanya. Mbak Hari bisa bantu saya juga.
No, I see someone like raising hand.
Oke, ya silahkan Mas Alif. Iya, silahkan ya, unmute dan menyampaikan pertanyaan.
Baik, terima kasih Bapak Andre. Sebelumnya selamat pagi. Terima kasih atas penjabaran yang sangat luar biasa, Bapak.
Ya.
Pak, saya izin bertanya, Pak. Untuk pemula seperti saya, itu kira-kira berapa ya, Pak, waktu yang diperlukan untuk persiapan untuk orang yang baru mau memulai untuk mencari beasiswa, Pak? Kira-kira berapa bulan dari belajar IELTS hingga mencapai skor yang mencukupi, terus untuk belajar tes-tes yang tadi PBA, lalu skolastik, lalu untuk wawancara, Pak? Boleh Pak, mohon pencerahannya Pak. Terima kasih.
Baik ya, ya pertanyaan yang sangat bagus. Terima kasih Mas Alif. Ya, jawaban singkatnya relatif ya, Mas Alif. Ya, jawaban panjangnya itu tergantung dari starting point-nya Mas Alif sendiri. Contohnya untuk bahasa Inggris nih, kalau kemampuan bahasa Inggrisnya sudah bisa mencapai IELTS minimum itu dalam waktu yang singkat, maka waktunya juga akan sangat singkat. Kemudian untuk persiapan dokumen-dokumen, saya pikir itu mungkin perlu waktu. Kalau misalnya semuanya sudah ada, saya pikir bisa sangat cepat, 1 bulan bisa, Mas. Tapi kalau misalnya belum ada terjemahan ijazahnya karena ijazahnya dalam bahasa Indonesia, nah itu waktu yang harus diperhitungkan, dan itu kembali lagi tergantung layanan yang kita pakai itu bisa cepat atau tidak ya. Jadi jawabannya sangat-sangat tergantung, Mas. Ya, jadi kalau bahasa Inggris kadang-kadang masing-masing orang untuk ningkatin poin setengah aja IELTS itu bisa sampai 3 bulan sampai 6 bulan dalam satu section ya, Mas ya. Jadi itu betul-betul tergantung lagi bagaimana, kalau contoh untuk IELTS, komitmen Mas Alif untuk mempersiapkan diri, rajin praktis juga, luangkan waktu. Ya, mungkin kalau waktunya sedikit, ya saya pikir 30 menit sehari, 1 jam sehari itu akan sangat-sangat membantu dan bisa, kalau dilakukan secara intensif, maka bisa dengan cepat. Kemudian yang tidak kalah penting juga Mas Alif, harus cari komunitas yang bisa support, orang-orang yang bisa memberikan informasi. Jadi kalau saya lihat ya, kemudian saya dari NTT juga, Mas, kami punya grup pemburu beasiswa. Jadi harus join grup seperti itu sehingga kita bisa terinformasi apa aja update-update untuk bisa membantu kita dalam persiapan. Jadi ketika ada sesi seperti ini, kita bisa ikut. Kemudian juga ada pertemuan-pertemuan, ada sesi gratis ya bahasa Inggris atau persiapan info session terkait beasiswa kita bisa dapatkan. Jadi itu harus fokus dan harus mulai dilakukan dari sekarang. Mungkin itu jawaban saya, Mas Arif. Semoga bisa menjawab apa yang menjadi pertanyaan inti. Ya.
Baik Pak Andre, terima kasih banyak Pak.
Sama-sama Mas Arif. Sukses. Ya. Yang berikut, silakan Bapak Ibu. Boleh angkat tangan. Ya, Pak Slamet Usman Sadik, betul, dari Halmahera. Ya, di foto tadi yang saya share itu ada Mas Aryo Muhammad. Beliau ini postdoc di University of Bristol ya Pak, seorang penulis. Abang kita yang luar biasa, Bang Aryo ini sangat-sangat hebat. Bapak Ibu bisa search, cari akun beliau di Instagram atau di Facebook. Beliau banyak berbagi pengalaman. Dan ini juga ceritanya, pengalamannya sangat luar biasa. Dia berjuang untuk dapatin IELTS-nya itu banyak sekali perjuangan. Bahkan bisa sampai tahunan ya untuk bisa nyampe hasil skor. Tapi pada akhirnya beliau bisa menyelesaikan studi S3, bahkan sekarang bekerja untuk University of Bristol. Ya, itu sangat luar biasa Bapak Ibu. Dan selain itu juga dia banyak sekali berbagi inspirasi, informasi, dan motivasi melalui karya-karyanya. Saya rekomendasikan cari tentang Bang Aryo Muhammad tersebut ya. Makasih Pak untuk komentarnya di pesan. Pertanyaan berikut Bapak Ibu, silahkan kita manfaatkan waktu yang ada. Boleh angkat tangan.
Halo, boleh bertanya?
Ya, silahkan Mbak.
Saya dari Stagio Mataram, Mbak Rizka. Stasiun Geofisika Mataram.
Iya.
Oke, mohon izin Bapak mau bertanya, boleh kasih tips and trick bagaimana cara membuat esai untuk apa namanya pada saat pengajuan LPDP di university. Terus kemudian setelah itu apakah ada, kan biasanya kan kalau misalnya pengajuan LPDP itu kan kita butuh file-file atau dokumen yang perlu kita translation dengan apa namanya translation yang tersumpah. Nah itu apakah tiap universitas itu dia mempunyai perbedaan lembaga ataupun ada lembaga khusus yang diperlukan? Mungkin itu aja pertanyaan.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Gusti Ketut Satria Bunaga untuk pertanyaannya. Yang pertama itu tentang motivation letter ya. Jadi tipsnya Mbak harus betul-betul membaca ya poin-poin penting apa saja yang diminta dalam essay tersebut. Ya, jadi saat kita sudah tahu poin-poin yang diminta, biasanya itu mereka akan menanyakan sedikit goal utama kita. Kenapa kita mau belajar tentang itu? Ya, jadi itu harus straight to the point, langsung jawab. Kemudian juga kita harus memberikan sedikit informasi kadang-kadang latar belakang apa yang sudah kita lakukan, dan kemudian juga kita bisa linkkan dengan apa yang akan kita lakukan ke depannya. Dan ketika kita belajar nanti itu kita spesifik mau mempelajari, memperdalam apa, dan ke depan apa yang bisa kita lakukan. Kalau untuk yang tingkat yang lebih tinggi berarti itu sudah harus punya ide research-nya ya. Jadi itu perlu disiapkan juga dan butuh waktu untuk mempersiapkan itu. Nah, untuk pertanyaan yang kedua tadi, saya pikir Mbak Ketut nanti itu bisa kembali yang seperti yang disampaikan Mbak Hari tadi, ILF Global punya layanan untuk itu. Jadi kalau memang kesulitan itu nanti langsung ke ILF Global. Ini mereka dengan senang hati, ada Bu Rini, Pak Ketut, Mbak Hari di sini, kemudian juga Pak Happy, semua dari ILF Global akan siap membantu. Ya, mereka akan sangat paham betul, ada Bu Rini juga, itu bisa memberikan informasi yang lebih tepat ya. Dan untuk proses administrasi uni application itu sangat-sangat bisa dibantu oleh ILF Global. Jadi jangan khawatir, langsung hubungi ILF Global sekarang ya. Oke, itu aja jawaban dari saya. Semoga bisa menjawab ya, Mbak Ketut Satria. Silahkan. Pertanyaan yang berikut. Satu pertanyaan terakhir, tinggal 2 menit sebelum kita akhiri ya, Bapak Ibu.
Ada pertanyaan dari Ibu
ya.
Tia di chat. Izin Pak, kalau persyaratan masa kerja yang diperbolehkan dalam LPDP berapa lama? Apa CPNS bisa?
Ya, itu LPDP yang saya tahu, bahkan di masa saya melamar, itu fresh graduate juga bahkan bisa ya, itu Bapak Ibu. Jadi, tapi itu memang membutuhkan pengalaman organisasi ya. Tapi kalau Bapak Ibu sudah bekerja, poinnya lebih bagus lagi. Dan selain bekerja, tentu seperti saya bilang, pengalaman berorganisasi, kemudian di social organization, ya semacam bakti sosial itu sangat-sangat memberikan poin ekstra ya, Bapak Ibu. Ya, oke, itu mungkin yang bisa saya sampaikan. Jadi tidak ada batasan waktu untuk pengalaman, kecuali mungkin beasiswa yang lain itu mereka mensyaratkan itu ya, pengalaman bekerja minimal sekian tahun ya. Kemudian ada pertanyaan dari Sorong ya, Stage of Sorong, untuk beasiswa LPDP sepenting apa LOA ya. Mas, kalau dari Papua ini kita diuntungkan ya, untuk beasiswa afirmasi kita nggak terlalu diwajibkan untuk langsung dapat LOA. Itu poin-poin yang bagus ya. Tapi kalau yang reguler itu harus ada LOA ya. Jadi untuk mendapatkan LOA tadi juga bisa minta bantuan dari ILF Global. Tapi kalau mau untuk dapat pengalaman langsung secara mandiri juga, biar menambah wawasan juga, Bapak Ibu tahu betul prosesnya, dan ini sangat membantu pada proses interview. Dari sekarang belajar juga, kunjungi website universitas tujuan Bapak Ibu, kemudian lihat course yang ingin diambil atau jurusan yang ingin Bapak Ibu ambil, dan lihat di sana untuk apply, di situ sudah ada persyaratannya, kemudian belajar untuk juga menulis essay dengan bantuan ILF Global kalau mau. Dan nanti kalau memenuhi persyaratan, nilai bahasa Inggris IELTS-nya atau TOEFL-nya sudah memenuhi standar, maka bisa mendapatkan LOA yang harapannya unconditional, artinya sudah tanpa syarat. Jadi kalau punya LPDP dan apply beasiswa yang reguler, maka itu akan menunjukkan ke panitia bahwa Bapak Ibu benar-benar sudah siap untuk kuliah ya. Dan penyelenggara atau penyedia beasiswa biasanya memang mencari orang-orang yang sudah betul-betul siap dan sudah melakukan sesuatu. Dia nggak mau cari orang yang belum melakukan apa-apa ini, baru rencana. Tapi kalau kita udah take action duluan, maka ya itu salah satu bukti bahwa kita committed dan we're ready ya. Kita mau untuk kuliah dan layak untuk mendapatkan beasiswa. Dan itu juga doa dan harapan saya buat Bapak Ibu semua. Bapak Ibu, mohon maaf karena keterbatasan waktu, saya harus mengakhiri presentasi saya, dan ada yang minta kontak, ada rekan dari Waingapu juga. Saya akan share screen saya di bagian akhir. Ini ada kontak, boleh screenshot saat ini Bapak Ibu ya. Alamat saya, kontak detail saya, nanti bisa WA di 082 145 267 191, di screenshot dari sekarang. Nanti bisa search juga di Google Andre Maure ya. Saya ada di Instagram, ada di Facebook, ada di LinkedIn, dan ada komunitas saya juga tadi Sobat Cendekia, atau bisa kontak ILF Global. Nanti Bu Rini punya kontak saya, Bapak Ibu bisa minta, saya akan dengan senang hati berbagi pengalaman saya dan juga informasi yang semoga bisa membantu Bapak Ibu saya, Bapak Ibu semua. Itu yang bisa saya sampaikan. Terima kasih banyak. Semoga informasi yang saya bagikan, pengalaman saya bagikan bisa menjadi inspirasi buat Bapak Ibu semua, dan saya doakan Bapak Ibu sukses untuk bisa meraih beasiswa dan melanjutkan studi di Universitas Tujuan dan negara impian Bapak Ibu semua. Saya kembalikan ke Mbak Heri dari ILF Global Jakarta. Terima kasih semuanya.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Andre atas informasinya, sangat-sangat informatif dan sangat-sangat berguna sekali. Baik, kita sudah di penghujung acara. Terima kasih semuanya atas waktunya. Sebelum itu saya ingin mengingatkan bahwa untuk seperti yang Pak Andre sudah sebutkan, ILF Global siap membantu Bapak-Bapak sekalian mengenai aplikasi ke universitas atau informasi mengenai universitas. Kita juga bisa membantu Bapak Ibu untuk proses LOA, baik itu untuk LPDP maupun Chevening dan yang lain-lain, kecuali untuk AS ya, seperti itu. Jadi nanti bisa kontak ke ILF untuk urusan hal-hal yang berkaitan dengan study overseas, itu bisa dibantu oleh ILF Global. Ada Ibu Rini, ada Pak Ketut, ada Ibu Vita, dan Ibu Marsha, serta ada saya yang siap membantu Bapak Ibu sekalian. Terima kasih atas waktunya. Saya kembalikan ke Pak Happy.
Baik, terima kasih Ibu Hari dan juga Pak Andre telah meluangkan waktunya memberikan paparan mengenai LPDP scholarship dan ini sebelum saya tutup, saya ingin mengaturkan terima kasih kembali kepada tim Pusdiklat BMKG, kepada Ibu Nelly, Bapak Yuwono, dan beserta tim atas kesediaannya sehingga acara ini dapat terselenggara dengan baik. Dan tentu saja terima kasih kepada 500-an peserta yang telah sedari tadi pukul 9 sudah mengikuti acara ini. Beri tepuk tangan virtual untuk kita semua. Semoga apa yang telah disampaikan oleh narasumber saat pagi ini dapat bermanfaat bagi kita semua. Saya akan share untuk WA IALF. Jika ada Bapak Ibu pertanyaan lebih lanjut mengenai IELTS test, silakan bisa WA ke saya, WA ke kami. Nanti saya akan bantu untuk menjawabnya. Baik, terima kasih. Saya kembalikan ke Bapak Yuwono. Silakan Bapak.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Happy yang telah memoderatori dengan cukup baik tadi, dan juga Bapak Ibu dari tim IELTS ya, IALF ya. Tadi ada Pak Douglas, Pak Andre, Bu Hari, dan tim di belakangnya. Terima kasih telah sharing kepada Pusdiklat. Terima kasih pula kepada Ibu Kapusdiklat yang telah bersedia untuk memberikan sambutan, dan tentunya seluruh peserta OGD. Mudah-mudahan acara hari ini dapat memberikan motivasi untuk future study-nya ya. Baik, tadi sudah ada kontak. Pak Andri juga memberi kontak, kemudian dari IELTS juga memberi terima kasih. Mudah-mudahan nanti bisa sharing, mungkin kalau ada yang sharing ingin dilanjutkan sharing khusus. Dan mengenai daftar hadir sudah saya share tadi di awal 20 menit sebelum acara ini, sebelum jam 11 ya. Baik, terima kasih semuanya. Karena tadi dibuka dengan pantun, akan saya tutup dengan pantun. Buah nanas, buah ceri dicampur gula enak sekali. Cukup sekian OGD kali ini, semoga bisa bertemu lagi di kemudian hari. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu, saya akhiri. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi menjelang siang. Terima kasih semua.
Terima
Waalaikumsalam.
kasih.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih,
Terima
Pak.
kasih Pak Yuwono.
Terima kasih.
Makasih semuanya.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak Andre, tadi saya nggak sebut di awal ya.
Oke, ya Bapak, Bu Nelly, makasih.
semuanya.
Sukses
Kapan
selalu Bu
ketemu?
Nelly. Sampai
Di
ketemu.
Bristol.
Iya.
Terima kasih.
Baik, mohon izin
Makasih
mengakhiri
semuanya. Iya.